Hey, it's Zim, and should you play Mythgard? This is a card game. It's available free to play via Steam, and right now, all the way through May 10th, you actually can get all the core set cards for free. I've played all the way through Mythgard's current storyline, though it's to be expanded later on, and it's very much kind of a mashup of like Hearthstone meets Duel Masters, if you've ever played that. It's kind of an old game. It does some interesting things. It does some not so great things. But overall, I think it's a very enjoyable game and a game that a lot of people would want to play and should play. But the bar to a lot of card games is you have to invest money, right? You're going to end up needing to buy booster packs and cards so you can build decks. Now, this game does some interesting things to make it so you don't have to invest too much in the beginning. In fact, you can play for free whether you had the core set cards or not. Now, because they're giving away the core set cards, I definitely think it's worth checking out. You can get them via their Discord or their Reddit. I'll have the links down below. But anyway, we're going to just kind of jump right in, and I'll show you why this game might be worth your attention. So the story mode starts with the tutorial, and then it's actually going to kind of go through the different factions that you can play as, which are different colors essentially. And each color has a different theme and a play style. And so these themes are centered around ancient beliefs. So blue is very Nordic versus like yellow, which is more Middle Eastern themed religious. They're very interesting ancient religion style. But the twist is you're playing in like a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk style world. One of the really cool things about the story mode that I didn't expect is that it's fully voice acted, and it's done very well. It's something I highly recommend, even if you're not much of a card game player or you don't see yourself getting into this game. It's definitely worth just downloading to play through the story for free. Like, it's a ton of fun. There's a lot of heart and soul that went into this. The art is amazing. The art style, I love it. And like I said, the voice acting is great. Now, in this game, you can craft decks. They will throw starter deck stuff at you just to get you started. These are some of the core cards, but like I said, if you follow the links below, you'll actually be able to get all the core cards and be able to build decks. But even if you don't do that, or even if you watch this video or get into Mythgard after May 10th, they do something cool, which is community decks. Now, these two decks are essentially designed by community members, and they rotate every Monday and Friday. It's a cool idea. I think it's really neat to get people into the game, and especially if you're maybe someone who's just trying to understand how to build decks as well. Like, you can see what decks are doing success and why they're doing what they're doing to reach that success, so then that you might have a better idea of, oh, I should build my deck more like this because of this. So it's really cool. Now, coming from a card game perspective of like online games where you're going to play a lot of people on like ranked ladders, essentially, these decks can become a very standard sight. Like, oftentimes you'll end up maybe playing against these decks more than you'd like, and that's both a learning mechanism, but B, can get pretty boring pretty fast. Although, that being said, Hearthstone has a very similar problem, and they don't give away community decks. Now, you don't get to keep these cards, by the way. These are only temporary, but even if you don't own the cards, you can play with them, which is great, and I love that. And if you just want to practice a deck, you just kind of click on it and hit practice, and I'm going to show you kind of how the game is played. So right from the get-go, there's no mulligan. If you're familiar with any card games, that means you get to kind of choose cards that you didn't want in your hand and send them back. My opponent's going to start playing. We're just going to ignore that, though. In this game, you don't get that. You also only generate resources by burning cards. Now, how do you burn a card? Well, you just choose a card in your hand. And it looks like red is what I'm going to be able to play early. But we'll burn this 9 cost. Now, these cards have a cost in the upper left-hand corner. In this case, this one costs 9. And it also has 4 green gems. What does green gems mean? It means that I have to have at least 4 green mana in my burn pool. And so what happens is, let's say I'm going to burn this card, which I will. You just kind of hover it back here. What it'll do is it'll burn it, which means it generates 1 mana for you permanently, but it also gives you a green gem. So if I wanted to play this Hopeless Necromantic, I have to pay 3 mana, but 2 of it has to be from my green gems. So there's kind of a 2-resource system going on. Also, when you burn a card, it doesn't get destroyed or anything. It goes to the bottom of your deck. Now, if your deck gets shuffled or you burn through your deck enough, if you draw back into those burned cards, you can't actually use them again to generate resources. They'll actually be grayed out. However, you can still play them on the board for their intended effect. Our AI opponent went first, and so some of the mechanics in this game, when you go second, you can use your hero power, if you're familiar with Hearthstone, for free for your turn 1, because I went second. That's the punishment for going first. First still gets to draw a card, but you get to use your hero power for free. So we'll do, in this case, we do damage. But I have to discard a card to do that. We'll discard this green. So one of the bad things about Mythgard is kind of this layout. It's very cluttered. As you go through the tutorial, it does a great job of explaining everything, but it definitely can be frustrating as you're learning and trying to figure out what's going on. Like, each of these spots here is where you can place a card, and that kind of depends on, like, what you're trying to do with that card. If you want to block people, like, see, he can attack these 3 lanes. So, like, there's an interesting mechanic there. You also have your hero power, which this isn't, like, dictated by anything. You actually get to choose which power you have equipped when you build your deck. Obviously, with the community-built decks, these are already chosen for you. You also have another secondary thing. This is Discus Arcadia. And, of course, the AI is just using the exact same deck I'm using. So it's Discus Arcadia. Your discard pile, which you can always look at. It's called the Boneyard. One of the things that, I mean, a lot of card games do this, and it kind of frustrates me. This card game is no different, is that it will rename everything. So, like, the term Sundown is at the end of your turn. Now, it tells you that. That's nice. However, like, it's frustrating to kind of keep track of these keywords. Like, oh, Boneyard's your discard pile. Oh, Sundown's at the end of your turn. Oh, Rush means it's essentially a charge. Demise is when they die. Ephemeral is when removed from the game. Like, like, there's a lot of keywords that are just thrown out at you, which can be frustrating, especially as you're learning. Another thing is, as you're playing games, especially in ranked mode, you'll start seeing just things happen, and you might not understand what's happening because A, you don't know the cards very well, B, like, it doesn't tell you what's happening, it just is triggering effects, and, like, I feel like they could clean that up a bit. There is essentially what they did their turn. So in this case, it's showing me on turn 1, they burned this card and they played that. On my turn 1, I burned that card, I tapped my ability, and then I had to discard a card because of disc. We'll end our turn here, though. So, like, there's definitely some things that I feel like they could do to clean certain elements up. He's just life-stealed there.
Watch me fly!
And there's a rush minion. Alright. Now we want to be able to play a 2-drop, which is either this Born Again or a Daring Trapeze. In this case, we will probably burn Ichor Feast. But we're going to actually play this Born Again. And I think we want to stop this lifesteal. All the cards have voice lines. The animations are pretty on the low end. Obviously, as you see, they just kind of swing at each other. Nothing too crazy. There are some cards that can like manipulate board stuff, which is cool, and they'll show animations for that. But like the animations overall are pretty on the low scale. There is a mobile app for this game as well. I'm playing on PC, of course, but Mythgard is. And they had to kill me, but they're still going to get some lifesteal there. Mythgard is a really cool game with a really cool art style. It's just kind of on a minimalistic style when it comes to like the actual board, and like I said, when it comes to actually explaining what's happening. Right now, most of these are kind of basic actions, so like it's nothing too complicated. It's pretty easy to follow. But there are definitely cards where like my opponent will do something, which like triggers 3 other effects that all trigger, but I don't know what's happening, and then I'm spending the next like minute like looking at like why that happened up here. But once again, if you're in a ranked game, you're actually on a timer instead of like what we are right now in a practice game. Try to get this Vulcan out of my hand. And so at the end of my turn, Born Again is going to return to my hand. We might want to just lead astray here. Kind of just get it off the board. Once again, my opponent would see that go to my hand, but like unless they knew what Born Again does, they'd be like, wait, why did that go to his hand? They'd have to figure out where it is on the time. Which, I mean, like, to be fair, at least this turn order of like what's happening is numbered, so you know exactly what turn they did something on. This is not going great for me, though. So, I have 2 Daring Trapezeists, which I'd like to play. However, if... Play one, let's say here, so I can kill that one. You'll notice I can't play this one because I don't have the red gem. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to like having those 2 types of resources. So if I want to play a second one, I'm going to have to get rid of Gorgonelli. In that case, I can play a second one now.
Hey, watch the net.
They're discarding for their hero ability, burning a card, and they're probably going to drop something fairly good. That's unfortunate. I think I want to play him down, just have a big threat on. Now, I will say that the AI tends to be not great. They don't make the best moves, and I don't think I've ever lost a practice game to them. I think there's definitely improvements to be made with their AI. Even in single player, like where the decks are like custom built for those fights, like I often feel like the AI never really poses a threat, which is not great because like it can give the player a false expectation of certain things. Let's see here. So this has a forged ability, which is what I was reading. When burned, all copies of that card that you own become forged and are permanently modified in a specific way. So he gains overrun permanently once you burn him. So it's a card that you want to burn, which is cool. It's something I haven't seen before.
What is lost?
We'll just do that and hit him in the face. It's a
What is
well,
lost?
it's sad. It's definitely an interesting game in a lot of ways, especially once you get past the AI, where it's kind of like feels like an auto win. So what happened was she becomes this, and that, when awakens, added these to my hand. But once again, like, you can see where, like, suddenly something happens in the game that, like, it doesn't explain anything, and then suddenly you have cards in hand, or your opponent does, and you're like, wait a minute, what happened? And that can definitely you maybe use more clarification, or like bring notice to your opponent better, so that they don't feel like, well, wait, where did he get 12 cards in hand?
Covering fire. Deploy.
And end our turn there. There's definitely some really cool combos and really cool abilities and things that you can do in this game. I think it's pretty easy to miss what your opponent might be doing until it's too late, especially as you're learning the game. So I do feel like this game has a pretty high up there learning curve. But once again, because there are these community decks, at least you'll be able to start to understand that better, which, once again, I think is really a neat idea. I have to attack his blocker, which is unfortunate.
Deploy.
And in terms of other card games, I mean, I wish they would do that. Like, I wish we would see a...
Deploy.
Let's feed.
Pick a card to draw. Let's draw... Lift it. I would like to see other games kind of go about this, where there's like these community decks, so it's easier for players to get into these games instead of just like, oh, this is this game right here. Instead of just having like, oh, you want to get into Hearthstone? Well, how much money do you have? Because unless you can, get some of these top tier decks, like you're not going to be able to compete. Now, of course, like some games have actually, like Hearthstone has made some decent progress towards making more cards and decks available, but I think this game still does it better. So one of my biggest gripes with this game is it has what I'd call the mobile currency issue. The mobile currency issue is that you have different currencies now. First, you have just booster packs. It's just letting you know how many booster packs you have available to open. That's fine. Essence is like dust, if you're familiar with Hearthstone. So it's just a way to craft cards. And if you open extras of certain cards, you can deconstruct them for those, so you can craft other things. That's fine. Then you have coin and mithril. Both are used to buy packs and cards, though like mithril is like better than coin. So you'll notice like 150 mithril versus 1200 coin. So I automatically get suspicious when I start seeing these like other currencies. Like if it was just one, I'd be fine, but when I start seeing multiple, I get concerned that like, oh, well, like what currency matters more? And obviously like there is the store to buy mithril. Coins is an in-game only currency essentially. And mithril is what you pay for, and then mithril you can use to buy packs. But yeah, it's just something that always kind of grinds me the wrong way. Like I really would prefer if we just saw one currency. I also don't feel like they need two currencies, especially because like this is probably one of the most generous card games online right now, in terms of what they give you access to, not only just because of the free core set cards or the cards you get for completing the story mode, which is really good and definitely you should play it, but like it also just gives you a variety of other ways to gain via quests or missions. You also have faction missions. You get bonus coins for achievements, stuff like that. You get stuff for reaching certain levels. You get stuff for reaching certain status in ranked games. Like, there's a ton of rewards here already. And it's just kind of undercut by the fact that, like, yeah, but, you know, there's two currencies and one can only be used from in game and, like, can only, you know, maybe buy you a couple packs. And then Mithril is something entirely different because you pay to get it, except for, like, they'll also give you some Mithril for free. So, like, I have an awkward amount of, like, 11. And there's not much you're going to buy with 11 Mithril. Of course, you can also buy portraits. It's kind of just what represents, like, your avatar. There are no, like, characters specific in this game, unlike in Hearthstone, where you might choose a hero to play, which is also, like, your class. You can also use Mithril to buy card backs, which is something I've never understood in digital card games, because, like, you're never going to see the back of your card. Your opponent will. I would rather see these be more like free-to-play earn stuff and not just something that you can just spend money on. But I mean, that's all about whether or not you want to invest in that because you really care about the company and you're passionate about the game and you want to see it succeed. Maybe you want to give more money, but you have cards and so you just want other things to buy. Kind of like emotes. I mean, this is all just Mithril, which is something you just pay for. Same with boards. And then, of course, they also kind of do special packs. They also will give you a free X thing. So in this case today, for me, it was 50 coins. Yesterday, it was something else. I think it was some essence, if I remember correctly. And then you can also buy, like, in small amounts. But once again, I have, like, 11 Mithril. I'm not buying anything with these, right? And it's just, yeah. Overall, though, I think the game is very fair. It's very interesting to play. The free-to-play elements are definitely there, that even if you come in after you can no longer get the core set for free, I think it's a ton of fun to play. Like I said, the story mode is definitely worth it. And I think you'll be able to easily jump into these ranked games because of these community run decks, which are actually very solid. I was doing a couple ranked games earlier today, jumped right in. Matchmaking super quick. It didn't take anywhere at all. Like, I think it was like 3 seconds to find a game. And I was playing with one of these decks and I won, right? And so, like, these decks are very solid. I don't think they're set up poorly. I do worry that the more I play ranked, I'm going to keep seeing these community recommended decks because it's so easy to pick up. Especially for free-to-play people. That's not a bad thing necessarily. It just means that your meta might be slightly more stale on the ladder. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. This is Mythgard. You can pick it up on Steam. And like I said, from now till May 10th, you can actually get all the core set cards for free, which is awesome. The story mode is definitely worth checking out, even if you're not much of a card game person. Like I said, the art style is amazing. The voice acting is great. Definitely worth checking out. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you next time.